Alright, the Interceptor 650s. I'd rather address it as a motorcycle, which made me turn my head towards this brand for the first time, if not for the Himalayan. This is Royal Enfield's second honest effort in making technological progress in the motorcycling industry. Although this time they've been backed up by Harry's performance based off the shots, but have they done enough? Enough to keep the enthusiast interested? What better way to find out than to get talking about the engine?
A 648cc parallel twin motor with an overhead valve on each, fuel injected with a 270-degree crank profile. It's assisted with oil cooler for a rather air-cooled motor which produces about 48 bhp of power and 52 Newton meters of torque. Well, the most of the feature here is a first for the Royal Enfield, and the refinement level is just another surprising factor. What is even more impressive is the way this bike delivers power. I'm usually a fan of high revving motors which rather starts moving above 8000 rpm, but this time around I can't deny the usable nature of this motorcycle, which delivers 80% of the torque at as low as 2800 rpm. And then the refinement levels. The name Royal Enfield was usually stacked up with words like vibrations, but I think that doesn't hold good for this particular motorcycle. The vibrations are rather minimum, and thanks to the counterbalancing crankshaft with overhead valve setup. Also, talking about usability of this motor, the bike feels butter smooth at highway speeds like about 120 kilometers per hour. You still have enough juice per left so that you can make quick overtakes on the highway. Although the bike reclines at about 7500 rpm, it's get there rather quickly, courtesy with shorter stroke of about 67.8 mm, and the bore diameter is about 78 mm. So this is the first time Royal Enfield went with a setup with bore diameter more than the stroke length, so I think that has worked out.
Up next, the handling dynamics. Got to start this one by praising the chassis setup. Finally a Royal Enfield that can corner pretty well. I mean, it's not going to set track on fire, but they should be good enough to keep you happy when you encounter some twisties on your journey.
The suspension setup is supportive as well. We have 41mm forks up front and a 5-step adjustable coilover shock setup at the rear with piggyback reservoir. Talking about how they feel, the front is soft, but it's not too soft that it will rob off some confidence during spirited riding. Although the rear is 5-step adjustable with factory settings, it's set up really well to take in all the undulation in the road.
So far it seemed like a perfect bike, right? Well, it comes with some flaws too. The vibrations are well contained, but it does get buzzy at the tank, foot pegs, handlebar and the seat once you start riding the bike to its limit. The so-called motorcycle journalists were probably very excited to see a Royal Enfield be this refined that they forgot to mention the reality. Yes, there are still a lot of vibrations which do get annoying at high RPMs, but when you're riding sanely, keeping the motor under 5000 RPM, it feels butter smooth. The motor revs fast, but don't expect it to be as furious as the Duke 390 or the Yamaha 3 or even the Ninja 300 for that matter. I know it's not meant to be compared, but I'll get to that point later. And this by no means is a high revving engine as most auto journalists claim, as this motor is limited to about 7500 rpm and it does feel a little stressed out at the top end. The single overhead camshaft setup has to be blamed here, and I think a DOHC setup would have been a lot more helpful.
Next important factor to talk about are the brakes. You have 320mm rotors at the front and a 240mm disc at the rear with ABS as standard. Although this setup is the biggest for any Royal Enfield till date, the stopping power could have been a little better. The feel is alright, the feedback is fine as well, but the bike just doesn't stop quickly, especially when you are above speed of about 100 kmph. It's going to take a lot of time. It's taking its time, it's not going to stop anytime soon. You don't feel the ABS interfering, but the braking power is not up to the mark.
Also, the on-off throttle transition could have been a lot better. There's a decent amount of lag from the engine to respond to the rider inputs, and there's no hiding the weight of this bike. At over 200 kilos, this is relatively heavy, and the weight does get in your way during city commutes. It also takes a lot of efforts in tipping the bike from one end to the other, and that results in a lazy turnout. Next up, I was not impressed how efficient this one was for the kind of performance it offers. The lower fuel economy figures of around 17 to 18 kilometers per liter in the city is something that cannot be overlooked, and one could expect about 22 to 25 kilometers per liter on the highway at a constant cruising speed. If I had to judge it by its capability, that's when the story takes a twist. In the same price bracket, there are bikes that can do everything the Royal Enfield does and some more. Bikes that can cruise at a healthier pace with additional wind protection, with a lot more power on tap despite returning better fuel economy. Bikes that is not only restricted to highways but can also take on some track days. Bikes that are better engineered and promises unmatched reliability. If I had to give a verdict, this is not the bike for the enthusiast. The motor, although has the power, just isn't exciting. The handling, although is sure-footed, it is not going to teach you the art of cornering. The bike lacks a character which most other bikes around the same price bracket offers. But if you always wanted a Royal Enfield that can do healthy highway speeds and keep up with other 300cc bikes, then the Interceptor 650 is just the bike for you. So to sum it up, Royal Enfield finally made an incredible motorcycle. Something that can take you places and take you there pretty quick. Something that won't tire you out with extensive vibrations if you chose to go easy with the throttle. And something that's relatively affordable. And this, despite looking like a typical Royal Enfield. And then Royal Enfield still has a lot to prove on how reliable this package is.